Yes, Lawrence Bernstein, a professional speechwriter. Lawrence, wowee, you've been accused of all sorts tonight. You've been up in the High Court. You've been burying people. I mean, you name it, you've done it. Wowee, what an amazing job that you've got.
Oh, thank you very much.
I mean, you are a professional speechwriter. You know, this is what you do for a living. I mean, for people thinking, what on earth is one of those? Tell us what you actually do.
So it's really what it says on the tin. Somebody is going to be giving a speech or a presentation to an audience somewhere and they're worried about it. And they call me up and I chat to them and I generally either write it for them or give them some help in writing it themselves.
So would these be professional? So could this be, for example, maybe, I don't know, a doctor or someone like that who's got to give a big lecture on some new medical technique or that kind of thing? Or would it be more down to earth, like, I don't know, somebody who's got to be, best man at a wedding and they're frightened about the speech? Or would it be a combination of the two?
It's both. There's two halves of the business. There's a few of us actually who write there. And one half of it writes for professional people, and so it can be, as you say, people giving lectures at conferences, it can be pitches for new business, it could be presentations to the rest of their team in a big business, and all sorts of fundraisers and even politicians on that side. And then on the other side, as you say, it's all social speaking. So it's after dinner, it's weddings, it's parties, people who have to speak, who are very good at speaking at work, who actually get very nervous about speaking in front of people they know well. So we're very lucky, we write for all sorts of people and have to try and write like them.
So how did you get into this line of business? I mean, how did you start doing it?
To cut a very long story short, it started in the pub.
Really?
Yeah, I was working, actually doing something that somebody guessed I did, which was working in a bank. And I'd always written a bit, and I was in the pub one night helping a friend with his best man speech. And he bought me a couple of drinks, and we wrote a nice speech. And then he said, "Why don't you do this for a job?" So I put an ad actually in a magazine and got one inquiry for a speech, and this was about 10 years ago. And for about 3 years, I did it on the side, on weekends and in the evenings and so on. And then I started a little business, and now it's a slightly bigger business.
I mean, it's something which clearly, you can't learn to do. It's got to be a natural ability, a natural talent. Where do you think it comes from?
I don't.
I know.
I wasn't very good at anything apart from writing, really. I couldn't do sums or science or anything much at school, and I could just write quite easily. And I'd always found the writing quite naturally.
Okay, well, let's take an example here. Something which is, I know a lot of people, and we've spoken about it on this programme on numerous occasions, people phoning up and saying, my best mate's asked me to be best man, we've been best friends for years, I love him to bits, but my goodness, what on earth am I going to say? Well, how do you approach something like that? Someone comes to you and says, I've got to do this speech at this wedding, in a couple of months' time, there are going to be 500 people there, I'm shaking like a leaf, I can't put two words together. Where do you start? How would you deal with that? How would you help them?
Well, the most important two words you said there were 2 months, because when we got 2 months, it's a doddle, and I can explain how. We often get people calling with about 2 days who are panicking.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that soon?
And that's more interesting, so to speak. But no, when they've got time, it's mainly, generally, people's problem isn't that they don't know enough. It's generally that they know too much. And they're so desperate to find a way of including all their stories and all their thoughts and emotional stuff and funny stuff and everything else, that they end up just with a huge hodgepodge of ideas and notes, and they don't really know where to go with it.
Right.
And so the job is, a lot of it is about trying to come up with something that's going to be quite brief, but cover in this instance the groom or whoever the subject is in a really relevant, fun way, but thinking about the audience as much as you're thinking about yourself. So something that will just sound interesting and fun and relevant and appropriate, and then trying to find a really interesting way of weaving all the bits and pieces together so it doesn't sound all stop and start and.
It must be difficult, Lawrence, writing for somebody else. I mean, if you're writing a speech for yourself, you know the subject matter, you know your own personality, you know how people see you and how you would normally speak. Is it difficult to work for somebody else, or do you think it's actually easier?
I think it's easier. I think it gives you a chance to cut through a lot of, I think when it's your own speech and you've got all, as I say, so the problem is often just knowing too much and having too many stories or points to make, whether you're a professional or you're, just talking at a social event. And I think it's much easier with someone else to be a bit more objective and give them some pretty clear advice on what people may or may not find interesting and funny and so on. And also, I'm sure it's the same in many jobs, but when people tell you enough information, you can quite clearly grasp what really matters.
Right.
And sometimes I think when it's yourself, you find it hard to cut through to cut through a lot of the guff. It's
true. There's a huge fog there, isn't there? And you get bogged down with it. I mean, it happens here. You've got so much stuff that you're trying to put into a small script or something. You end up, just losing it. I mean, obviously, the answer to this is to come to you. But what advice would you have for somebody who has got to make a speech, whether it be at a wedding or has got to do a lecture or is going to do a speech at a local function or something like that? What basic building blocks would you advise people to adhere to?
Well, I think we're thinking about writing the thing and then how to deliver it well. In terms of writing it, the blocks are really, really simple. The first one is be relevant. So relevance meaning think about everyone else and what they want to hear rather than what you think you want to say, and work backwards from that point. So that's number one. Number two is be incredibly clear. So we use the word clarity a lot, which is just make sure that people understand where you're going with it and keep your points really, really simple and seamless so they all link together really nicely. Keep it as brief as you possibly can. So less words, although obviously it is a word that is associated with lots of words, the less of them you actually use, the better. And finally, if you can find a way of sprinkling that bit of magic on it to make it different and original and a bit fun, then generally, however serious the subject, even if it's a eulogy or a serious lecture at a university, people still want to smile. And finding a way just to bring the thing to life and have a bit of levity through it is always a good thing. So I'd say in terms of writing it, those are the 4 building blocks. In terms of delivering it, it's again about being slow, not rushing it. It's about looking at your audience rather than looking down at a sheet of paper and at your script. And it's about trying, even when you're nervous, not to sound robotic, not to sound like you're reading somebody's work out,
yes,
but actually like you mean it. Because I think under pressure, a lot of people sort of go into their shells a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating. And of course, failing that, then they get in touch with somebody like you. Your website, a lot of information on there. And of course, people can contact you as well. Your website, www.greatspeechwriting.co.uk. www.greatspeechwriting.co.uk. Lawrence, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.